This is me, it's Wolfram, and today I bring to you a video that will make a compilation of different deck lists with different playstyles that I think that should work. Like, either they are the most competitive or they are just casual builds, but they all will be a bit focused on what they want to do, and they will be able to function to some extent within reason. All right, so this video should help you if you are interested in Zorga and how to build it, maybe to grab some ideas, to change your lists a bit, like, I don't know, try things either for casual or for more competitive. We will see the different lists. I will talk about them, we'll explain some things about them, like how strong I think they are, or like try to explain how they focus, how they work, and in what they are focusing, so you know if this playstyle is for you or not. Either if you are more advanced in the game and you are looking for ideas, or you are a beginner, this video should help you have a bigger picture on the different and many possibilities Zorga has. Because as we know, Zorga is like, I think it's the most customizable deck there is in Standard currently, so yeah, let's get into it. For starters, we should know that Zorga can be built, in my opinion, in 3 different ways. For starters, we can build fully committing into aggro, which means our list will have less survivability, less grinding potential, but in exchange, it will be very fast and we'll start playing very soon and very explosively, and we'll be able to kill our opponents fast. Then we have the mid-range approach, where we will be able to... Its particularity, it's like it will be very flexible. It will be able to focus their plays into being aggressive, but we'll be able to switch speed into more grinding, into more late game. Like with mid-range lists, it's for you if you like utility, you like to adapt your playstyle in real time against every situation you are facing. And last but not least, we will have the full tanky approaches. Full tanky approaches and full grinding are very slow lists, but they are coming to be more popular in Japan with the printing of Habitat. And they're focused on surviving the meta calls like Gandiva, Willista, and other stuff they have there by grinding a lot of cards in exchange for having a little less of pressure. Okay, so let's get started with the aggro builds, and let's see what we got there. Okay, so here I will show you 2 examples. We have like the most common way of aggro there is, I think, for Stoikeia, which is abusing the brewing mushrooms. This card, it's very popular and helps those kind of strategies very well. The idea with the list below, this one, it's like we will try to set up very fast. We will generate a lot of soul and a lot of tokens, and we will use our freeze and gather upon me to set up very fast boards with our RPDs that will swing for over 20 power because of the 5k boost from Burrowing Mushrooms, and we will want to get very fast kills. The good part of this build, it's like, since Mushrow it's creating a lot of soul, you can run Frozen Resentment, which will be able to replace the mushroom once you are using it, and will be able to find your pieces fast. So you will be able to construct very fast boards that will be able to kill your opponent very fast. If you go upstairs a bit, we have this build, which was the first one build I played in BT10 when the deck came. This deck, it's not like so good at creating these board states, but can be very high rollish with Gather Upon Me, because you use Eygoleth to get your orders fast. And also Eygoleth, it's like a very fast card, because you pay the cost for it, you get the marker, and you get the card to play next turn. So it is really a very fast and cost-efficient card. And with this list, which I think personally it's like too expensive for what it actually does later, but you should be able to kill fast by abusing the 3 drives and 4 drives turns. Okay, when we look at what an aggro... Oh, yeah, let me commentate this for a second. You see there is like 4 unit PGs, When I created those lists, I was using the copy and edit function from Decklog. So I forgot to swap the PG into Elementaria. When you're playing the midrange and the tanky build pre-BT11, we drop Elementaria completely because we are not making use of the fact it is a blitz. And we cannot bounce it with Shadow, right? Because it's not a unit. But here we don't run Shadow, so we want to have the one of Elementaria because it benefits us. Yes, there was a dramatic pause here because I wasn't sure if I was recording. Okay, this happens to me a lot. This is my first video of that kind, so apologies. Okay, so as I was saying here we want to run this one of Elementary. It won't really matter because we are dead past turn 4, but if you can afford it or have it, Elementary will be slightly better because as we see we have Gather Upon Me, so it might come to the situation where we want to discard it. Okay, so there is a few differences here, like the cow gets into Mushroom because we can then are allowed to play Frozen, but those lists will share some similarities. Like those lists are like all or nothing deck lists, like they are very linear strategies that will have lower complexity. I think this deck, it's like those decks are very good if like you are new to Zorga, because the amount of things you have to consider in general will be lesser. Like, of course, you have to take into account the order counts and the soul management and the CBs, but the games will be overall shorter and the amount of tools you are deploying on the board are a bit slimmer. Maybe perhaps the list above has a bit more of complications because you need to actually think turns prior what are you going to do to step over the RPDs, while on the Mushroom build, Mushroom will already cover for that because you will step over the dragons for free. But overall, those two lists are easier to play than midrange or tanky builds and are good for beginner because the amount of choices you have to take require less foresight and they are less punishing to follow. Okay, so if we go to ups and downs, we can see that this is a list that will achieve killing potentials very fast and it's very linear. Like it does one thing, and if that thing doesn't work, then there is no other follow-up, right? So the downsides to that, I think it's like once you are past the turn 4, you are very likely to lose out of the bat. Like if you are not killing fast, you don't have any more cards to keep going, so you will die fast. With both lists, you are not able to play a longer game. All right, this is a very diminishing point in my opinion, because given how Vanguard works right now, at least the aggro plays you want to commit into your plays have to be very well linked into a mid-game follow-up. What I want to mean, it's like the risks of taking an aggro approach are too high if the mid-game explosiveness it's not worth it. Like if we see a deck like Willista can rush very fast because can call double Romana, Yuika for 28k power swings turn 2. That's very aggressive and you can die versus Willista out of the bat. But also Willista will be able to grind a lot mid-game and will also increase its firepower into turn 4 because they will have this 5 attacks, very strong 5 attacks. So there is a lot of legs that will have this killing potential if the starting hand is very good, but they can also follow up, right? They can overcome the risks of opponent healing or hitting defensive OT because they have something very strong and very good tempo-wise to do in mid-game. Those lists do not have that. So if you pick those, you have to be very aware that you have a very limited amount of time to play, right? If the time gets exceeded, you have nothing to do. Like you need to sack with Gather Upon Me or something, and you need more luck to win. Like those lists are good in my opinion if you like the playstyle, but they are not suited in my opinion for longer tournaments at all, because in like 8 rounds, the amount of times you will break and be able to do nothing, it's too high. I think those decks are very good for casual gaming because you go to the tournament, play 4 games for fun, and that's very good. But if you have to play more games, the chances of breaking are too high, right? I don't consider those lists to be very like competitive. I consider them to be fun choices you can take to play. Also, just to note, I used to play this deck with 4 cows, the one above, and 2 kill, but I realized that since you don't have freeze, or frozen reminiscence, sorry, I put it 1 cow to 3 and just to add the 3rd kill in order for it to work. Okay, should we like give a score to the deck? I think it wouldn't be like really high compared to the others, pretty much because of consistency issues. However, I think it's very good for beginners. It really is beginner friendly, and I think like since the skill cap for the max potency of the deck it's not that high, you will be able to introduce yourself to the archetype and well master it pretty fast. So I think it's a good pick if you're starting with the deck. But it's very fun. Feel free to choose it. Okay, so here we have the mid-range approach, which is basically the list I posted recently. The only change with that is the fact that I'm running fronts here. Also, it's worth noticing, like, I did this video now because we are starting with the PCS season and we might want to know how to build or something, but those lists will be a bit outdated soon. Like, I think the 2 we have seen in Aggro will stay the same because you need, like, Frozen to play with shrooms, but feel free to add Habitat once you have it. But this list will change a bit because Habitat is really good. It's like essentially freeze for no soul blast cost, so you really want to have it. The thing with that card is that it doesn't get a card from the drop zone, so when you add the soul blast cost from freeze, but you are getting something you already have, like we also have to consider the fact that we are actually gaining 1 copy of the card we're putting back into hand with Shadow. Like, Habitat is really good to get the pieces, but we should still run some some Frozen, because that card is generating more of what we already have seen. So Habitat will be taking a PG, for example, from top deck, this meaning that we are less likely to check another, but with Frozen, we can keep the same copies of the cards in circulation. We can recycle cards. Okay, so when we get into the mid-range approach for the deck, the thing we need to know about it, it's like, while it doesn't excel at anything, it won't be the most aggressive and it won't be the most tanky, it still has enough of both worlds to be good. And what this deck is excellent at doing, it's at being flexible, at letting you choose what approach you want to take versus every pairing possible. There is more ways to build midrange, like you can take away some of the cards you see here, for example, like just to Frozen for regular rotation or something, if you want to split more on your utility. Here I choose this because I think it's what suits the meta the most, but now I will show you another list that from another player that runs more spiciness. Okay, so the point of this deck, it's like if you play it really well, if you really understand the hidden uses of the cards, you get to be able to shine a lot with this deck because you can like flex what you're doing to the maximum, like, right? If you just draw cards, alright, you won't die, but if you can like draw just 5 and gain more power in the middle, maybe you are taking enough from your opponents to have this excelling point versus other versions, right? Or being able to green more compared to the aggro ones, right? So this deck has the most aggressive power that is still not losing too much on the grindy aspect of the deck, right? You are able to grind enough while still having enough potency. You can also sacrifice potency in order to grind a bit more, or you can grind a bit less in order to be a bit more aggressive, right? If you are able to handle this perfectly, you will be able to show the true potential of this kind of builds, okay? The only problem with that, so the ups are that the consistency is good enough, the high flexibility, a lot of potency in mid-game, and a lot of sustain. The downs with this is that if you commit the cards in the wrong way, the punishes will be like too big and you will lose. It will be your fault, but you will still lose, and we don't like to lose, right? Also, when we compare these lists to the other ones, it is a bit more reliant on pieces. right? Okay, so maybe it's not as reliant as the aggro one, because the aggro one wants to have the pieces so fast that you will miss them too much. But when we compare this to the tanky, and one of the reasons people like transitioning to the more tanky playstyle, it's because you don't run kill on those lists, and you don't need, or you don't not rely on those pieces as much. So if you want something that it's the most consistent as possible, this won't be the most consistent, but it's the one that if I think you play it smooth, it will give you the best results personally. All right, let's take a second to have a look at a different kind of mid-range list. I have it just there. Okay, this list is from Romain. It's the bro list he used. And I come here just to show you how you can overtune it a bit more in order to be able to have more flexibility. Romain was running Rework Mutation here, which I think it's a bit more complicated. This list, it's even more complicated than the one above, because you need to know perfectly where the pieces come into sense, and you need to be aware of how you will invest your resources for that game. As I said, this list is very very hard to play, because you need to be very aware of what kind of game you're playing, right? If you want to abuse rec, this means you won't be able to kill, or if you want to kill more because you are seeing the game goes in your favor, then you won't be able to play miasma or rec at some point, right? I think this deck, it's trying to, like, I know I won't be killing in every game, killing as in kill. Okay, sorry. I won't be using my fourth attack every game, and some games I just want to grind out or destroy my opponent's rear guards. So I imagine he might have thought I will just accept kill. It's like an inconsistent thing on itself, because maybe you don't run it. So I would prefer to have more tools, see what are my cards from that game, or see how I want to approach the playstyle for that game. And he probably thought, okay, I will just reduce the amount of drawn tree wretches, like 3-to-1 ratio seems fine, right? If you really want to use skill every game, just as I want with my build, I think 2 and 4 it's like the best thing you can do, because you will see the cards the more often, right? If that's what you wanna do actually. But the moment you introduce rec into the equation, you're introducing the ways to play other kinds of games, disruptive games, control games, and there it makes sense, because you don't want to use the CV1 for Go that often, right? Because you might need that CV on another thing like Rec or Miasma. So I think this is where the extra Zorga makes sense on this mid-range list, because you want to be able to get the orders back to hand in a different way. Also, you can use the rewrite to get more soul, and you can get the blue Zorg out of Forbidal, right? So I think because Remain is playing the game more differently through the different matchups, this deck makes sense as it is here, right? You don't want to kills because you want to be using the fourth attack as much. You don't want as Dragon Tree Wretches because maybe you won't be using kill even, and maybe you don't even want to pay for the marker that game. All right, so that's another way of doing it. Also, for example, there's other differences. Like I personally don't like the 10k heals. I think that I don't know. I prefer the 15ks. Also, every time we play, we go to deck out, so it doesn't matter as much, I think. Okay, well, that was the commentary for the list. Let's move forward. All right. Also, both lists, like, there is like this misconception of tanky builds being like super far furthermore tanky than those ones, but I just do not agree. Like, tanky builds have the abolishment for sins, the blitz order, which obviously will make the difference. We will see that, but you can play like tanky lists will not call boosters. Like, they will have 2 shadow cloaks maybe, and will try to double bounce with cards. But I have seen people say some things that I don't think they are true. Like, they say that the tanky build can use more resources, like if they had more soul, but that's not true because they are still paying the same soul for abolishment for sins, and that those lists cannot do the double shadow play to bounce two cards at once, because what defines that, it's like having the two shadows and having two ways of calling a card to the board for that turn. So as long as you have the possibility to bind one Zorga, or to use freeze with miasma, or reg with miasma, or reg with freeze, you will always be able to do the double bounce, right? It's the same, right? If you use malice, like you use cow with malice, replacing the same soul with the cost, and use freeze, and maybe you bind Zorga. You have two shadows, you will be able to do the double bounce anyway. And the extra soul, it's made up with the abolishment for sins order, right? So yeah, basically those lists are, in my opinion, very strong at potency, at firepower. They have a very good survival possibilities, like and they still keep all the flexibility that Zorga can have, right? So I think midrange, it's my preferred style to go. If I would try to compete, I would go with midrange, because I think it's the best way to do so. And I think it's also the most fun. Like, you have a lot of choices to do. It's very, 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 very fun. Okay, so again, last but not least, let's move into the Tanky. Yeah, overall power for me, this is a 9. The numbers for me do not mean that much, right? I don't think this is objectively a 9. It's more so we can gauge and compare the lists with each other, right? So I consider this to be a 9 versus the Aggro 6.5. But it's not like the 9 would compare to Gandivat anyway, in any way, or Willista, right? So those numbers are just valuable within the video to compare the things, right? How much defensive I consider one list to be versus the other, how much of a complex deck it is versus the other, all right? So let's move onto the last stage, which is the tank builds. We spoke about consistency. I think this list is the most consistent indeed, because you run less pieces, right? And then so you won't brick as much, right? Kill won't be missing if you don't run it. But this, on the other hand, it's basically like saying you won't be able to do that play ever. So you are actually giving up on something to be that consistent, right? I would say I don't think this is much more consistent, but well, it is a bit more consistent, so it's worth considering. This is the list that will green the most. If you like very, 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 very late game and grindish lists, this one, it's probably the most grinned deck in the meta, in the BT11 meta, even more than Willista, and still has a very good fire potency, like the 2 RPDs per turn, 45 with the miasma or double miasma, 50Ks, it's still a lot of power, right? But this list has some other issues as well. It struggles at closing games, which means you are not as unlikely to go to timeout. And since it struggles to kill and it draws more, you are also more likely to lose to deck out. Also, this deck starts very slow. Like, I think in the mirror match, you won't ever Persona right never, because you won't be able to keep up with the get to game. Like, if you go first, you're always forced to ride up first, and you will lose the Persona, and you are very likely to have a very bad turn 3. But well, then you go into Abolishment for Sins, which is a very broken card, all things considered. Like, it's basically like it's the most close we are to a card like an attack nullifier, right? Because you guard for 25, you are basically stopping any attack, but you don't lose the card, you draw another. It's not the same like removing the card or saying you don't attack, but this is the closest we are to saying you don't attack with this card this turn. Basically, right? This is what this card is doing. Okay, so this deck, it's a bit less complex. If you like something more linear, maybe this is better for you, because your playstyle is more clear always. You will start slow, you will play for the long game, you will play for green. You won't overcommit cards. You cannot do that kind of mistake, because the right play, it's just play it slow, because that's what the deck is going to do. And This makes it a bit easier, but we have to care because since we're not running cow, we rely on Zorga to grab orders back to hand and on overcoming. Like, this deck wants to use Malice every turn with Miasma, but you cannot do that as easier as the mid-range build is doing it, because you cannot grab the orders to hand and choose your sequences as much. You have to be able to sequence overcoming an eternity very, 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 very well. I think like this deck can be very good or very bad, given how good you are or not at timing that card. Like, if you're good at overcoming an eternity, you will be able to have very smooth games where you won't ever miss an order, and will be able to go full tanky by cycling through abolishment. But if you don't use it properly, I think it's very bad, because you suddenly lost because you don't have more orders to keep up, etc. And about the firepower of the deck, I would rate it a 9 as well. Like, I think this list, it's very similar to the other one on power, because the amount of cards you are grinding, it's also like plusing your opponent, because you are swinging for less. This means you're farming cards, but also your opponent is farming cards, so they can tank your attacks more, etc, etc, etc. Well, so those are the lists that I think reflect the different ways you can build Zorga. It's not that you have to play those lists. Oh, yeah, also, I grabbed this from Toronto BCS. The player is Teddy UN. I hope I said it well. And this list is also topping list. Okay, so I'm not sharing those lists because you have to do the same. Like, it's just for you to grab some ideas and understand what kind of approaches you can have with this deck and be able to build. I will be actually doing another video on how to deck build comprehensively, like understand why you put the card there for a Zorga or not, what cards are part of the core or not, for you to be able to tune the decks with knowledge. But yeah, with Zorga, I think like we have to be very happy about how we build, because doing the things like I think we need to have an objective when we approach card games. Like, we want to have fun, we want to try different things, we want to go for drives, we want to win a lot. I don't know. We have different objectives. So I have shared here lists that I think that they can reasonably work, that are focused on their own objectives. But feel free to destroy them, copy them, or whatever. I don't know. I'm doing this to be happy, and I want you to be happy as well. Okay, so I hope you have fun. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm WolfriendBG, like Vanguard, and I will be posting more videos like that. As I said, I have this video on the cooking room, but on the kitchen, and I will try to put it there. Okay, so here we are. If you have any questions, please put them on the comments on the YouTube page, because I love to answer them. This video came actually from an idea that people gave me, like, because some people asked me about different kind of playstyles, so I decided to go ahead and make this. So just feel free to ask anything, right? Because maybe I have forgotten something, I have a lot to do, or maybe I haven't explained something properly. I will explain again as many times as it's needed. All right? So hope you enjoyed. Bye bye and see you soon. Also, if you like and subscribe, I will be more happy. Or I don't know, if you like and subscribe, I will cry like Has Tears Black Dragon, but I will be very happy. Like, it will be a very happy Black Tears Husk Dragon. Bye bye.